Canada is free. Canada is sovereign. Canada will choose its own destiny. Thank you very much.
The president has been very clear that he is continuing to have the conversation around the annexation, which...
Is that Willem Dafoe? Is that that's the guy who played the Green Goblin? Was that Willem Dafoe? Am I thinking of the right person?
Willem Dafoe,
Yeah. There you go.
most Americans don't take seriously. I would say we don't believe, generally that that's actually something that's real or in a real agenda.
President Trump isn't joking when he talks about Canada becoming a 51st state. That's the message. CTV News has learned that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered to attendees an economic summit that he hosted today in Toronto. Just how seriously should we take the threat? Let's bring in the front.
Canadians are watching right now.
I can't handle that reporter. He's just not really just like talking. He's basically just a model reading a teleprompter.
They're watching to see that our leadership collectively.
Well, he's good looking. He's good looking. I'll give him that. You know, I don't think it's, give credit where it's due, you know.
Is able to meet this moment, is able to step up, is able to be there to say, this is Canada, we got this, and this is how we're going to do it.
This is about Canada being ambitious. This is about Canada being confident. This is about...
Dude, it was, I don't know who,
catches me off guard.
Started calling this guy a chihuahua, and I don't understand the reference. I don't know if it's just because of his mannerisms, but I literally saw, I think it was like Canadian Looney did one of his thumbnails, and he's literally got him next to a chihuahua. It was just like, what is this? That was so funny.
Canada winning in the economy of the 21st century.
The tangible results in the next 30 days for us to reduce red tape, for us to eliminate barriers to trade, and for us to build a domestic economy without going through Donald Trump is here and is now.
All right, and there you have it. What can Canada do quickly to insulate and protect against threats, economic and verbal, coming from President Trump?
Holidays or something?
And the very real
everybody's on holidays. He's just like the fill-in.
Possibility.
No, it's power play. It's power play.
Early March, we will be in a trade war. It's the challenge that
she's off, and Mike Lecoutier, who did a way better job, is off because he did a great interview. Maybe he got in trouble for grilling the Liberal too hard in the last interview he did.
Is facing every government nationwide, federal, provincial, municipal. There are a lot of ideas, but 3.5 weeks is a very tight timeline. Let's bring in the front bench, Sabrina Grover.
His eyebrows don't move. Like, he's just constantly squinting and they don't move. It just drives me nuts.
Melanie Paradis, Najoud Al-Malise. Najoud, I want to start with you here. What needs to happen in your mind?
To get rid of internal trade barriers?
Absolutely. Whatever needs to happen. All the different strategies. Yes.
Well, I think that right now there's clearly momentum for change, for political leaders to do something. And so, for example, on internal trade barriers, we're in a moment where premiers are all talking about this in unison. We are talking about building pipelines potentially, you know, the Quebec government suggesting that it would be open to a project of LNG between Alberta to Quebec. And so there is clearly a window of opportunity that the Prime Minister has referred to as well to take action. The reality is that the barriers to growing Canada's economy have been known for years, and it will take a willingness to potentially challenge interest groups on some of these points. And so it's easy to become a little bit skeptical of how much governments will actually accomplish during this time, given the short time frame until tariffs could come into place, but also because of some comments they've made, such as, you know, parties suggesting we're not interested in reconsidering supply management, which controls the production of things like dairy. And so I guess really time will tell if we'll see real political change on some of these big economic issues, regulatory burdens in the country. But you can be sure that nothing is going to be monumentally different in 30 days, which is the deadline that the president has given us.
And Sabrina, because of the size of the U.S. economy, like it or not, are we all dancing to Trump's tune?
You know, I would say that this moment is kind of like that gold medal hockey game where Canada's against the United States, and you are seeing Canadian.
Why are the Liberals making all these hockey analogies lately? Like, do you think this makes them more relatable? You know, because she's like the Liberal analyst, from what I understand.
come together and like actively root for the United States to lose. And this is the best time and the most exciting momentum to use to build that internal trade prospect and to build that domestic economy that Canada knows it's possible. I think, we've already seen significant movements. I saw in the Logic today, former senior minister in Legault's government, Fitzgibbon, saying that Quebec could be open to an LNG project in Canada. And that is a real diversion from where we were, 6 months ago, a year ago. So I think that the momentum is certainly there to remove those trade barriers. And I think that's the first step for Canadians to reactivate our economy. But I think more importantly, beyond Canada, is we have, hundreds of other states or countries that we can be negotiating agreements with. We have a lot of untapped market potential when it comes to the African continent. We started a little bit of that work last year, but we've never really gone to it to full extent. We have a collaboration agreement with the European Union. I think that could be strengthened. And we've already tapped into Asian markets. There's a lot of potential for Canada. It's just about activating it and reorienting.
So what do you think about them just trying to strengthen other ties and not try and strengthen the relationship with the United States? Do you think that they should move away from being friendly with the United States and try and strengthen ties with other countries? I don't think that's a good idea.
Every country in the world is going to be doing that right now because nobody is going to want to trade with the United States because they have no idea what this guy's going to do because he's threatening tariffs on everybody. He's acting all crazy. No, he's unpredictable. Who wants to make trade agreements with somebody who's unpredictable? Nobody. Why would you want to do business with someone like that?
Well, Trump is in a lot of business.
Yeah, that's true. He's got the market. He's got a huge economy. If he was smart, he would want to trade with people, but he's doing this weird protectionism thing. So it's going to make everybody else not want to trade with them anymore.
We'll see. I just think that that's not the answer of how we're going to combat the rest of the world or how we're going to take on this next century. Is not by tearing apart the only thing that keeps this continent together, which is the
absolutely. So why the hell? Why? So Trump needs to stop doing it because that's who's trying to tear apart North America right now and make us all be adversaries instead of partners.
Well. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of countries. Japan just struck the LNG deal yesterday or today. Was it yesterday or today with the US? And that's what Poilievre actually said. That Poilievre said that all these people that were looking to Canada were being denied these business deals and being denied these requests.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It's just so stupid. It's like, what are you doing? People are I'm starting to think Trudeau's actually high. I'm starting to think he actually has a drug problem. Because nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. Incompetence and malicious intent don't even excuse it all. It's just all over the place. It's just he must just be out of his mind. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Our own minds away from the United States.
And to you, Mel, and let me be blunt, you know that interprovincial trade barriers have been an issue for so long. And I'm just curious to get your read. The idea that now that we've averted a trade war, at least for now, there may be less urgency. That unless there's actually a trade war that's going on, just the threat isn't enough to start really making effective change on bringing down those barriers and getting rid of some of the protectionism that's out there.
Oh, I think that the threat is enough. I think I agree with Sabrina that this tone shift has been massive. And politicians across the country are going to be taking advantage of that and moving quickly to change the regulations that we need to change, to repeal bad pieces of legislation like federally, Bill C-69, which is the Anti-Pipelines Act, that needs to go. We need to change regulations to cut red tape to make Canada more competitive. We need to make massive investments in our Arctic for national security reasons and also to invest in infrastructure to connect it to the rest of the country for sovereignty. We need to invest in...
Yeah, he got that from the tampon. That's what happened. He got poisoned from...
Well, it's toxic shock syndrome.
Is tampon part of the syndrome or was it what gave him the syndrome?
No.
I'm trying to...
Well, toxic shock syndrome is when you have a tampon in for too long, I think. And gives you toxic shock syndrome.
Okay, let's just move on.
Sorry.
Rail and pipe.
Too much of a man for that conversation.
We need to leverage our quantum industry, our AI industry. Canada is actually a world leader in quantum technologies and in AI, and we need to keep investing in that to hold that position. And to the point about trade deals, we should be negotiating CANZUK, the Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK trade agreement. But you know what all of this requires? requires Parliament to be sitting, requires people to be back in the House of Commons, voting on changes to legislation and voting to pass budgets so that we can
almost like the government doing what it was designed to, almost like, the representatives of the people doing the work, not just the liberals. You know what I mean? The liberals don't represent the whole country. They represent a minority of the country technically right now, based off the last election results. And if you go by the current polling results, it's like less than a quarter of the country supports them.
Spend money to do these things.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but back to you, Sabrina. Is that likely to happen? I mean, we had the Minister McKinnon on earlier in the show, and he said, no, Parliament's not going to come back early.
I mean, listen, it's so interesting to hear so many conservatives talk about how great Parliament is when they spent the last 4 months of the last session stalling every piece of legislation that came before.
Okay. This drives me freaking nuts. That was the Liberals' fault. They handed over redacted information, and it wasn't just the Conservatives. Every other party and the Speaker ruled in favor of it. Okay? So stop acting like Pierre obstructed Parliament when it was Trudeau and the Liberals being incompliant and in contempt of Parliament and not doing their damn jobs properly that caused them to get nothing done for all those months. Not Pierre.
Both of them they both were doing it. Because Pierre could have just let it go until he won the election if he wanted to. But he didn't. He wanted to make a big deal out of it. It was both of them contributed to it.
No.
Takes two to tango.
Dude. They were found to doing something horribly wrong. They were caught. They wanted them to forcibly admit
I'm not
it.
saying that they shouldn't have done that. But
then they preach about rights. The same government that froze people's bank accounts who are Canadian citizens, non-terrorist Canadian citizens, froze their bank accounts. Same government is talking about rights and their right. You know what I mean? Like, screw off. Like, who are you guys? And then to me, I just don't get it. I just don't get how they're able to cling on to this so desperately. It's like, it's not because of the Conservatives that it was obstructed. Why did Craig Fergus rule in favor of it then? You know, the Speaker. I'm
not saying it was unreasonable. I think it's fine.
Blake Desjardins was going on saying in favor of it. Blake, the NDP MP in freaking New West, BC, was in favor of it. Like, everybody was in favor of it, not just the Conservatives. It was the one thing they all agreed on.
I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I'm just saying that if you don't want to do anything in Parliament besides that, then that's what's going to happen.
I just think it's just so stupid, this whole thing.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they weren't complicit in it. Obviously, the Liberals were a part of that, but I just think the Conservatives were also doing it. They all wanted to make that the hill they were going to die on.
I don't necessarily take it that way at all, because to me, it's like, are we just going to let the Liberals, like they literally are being caught red-handed with like complete corruption. And we're just, somehow this is not their fault that things are being, like, maybe if you did your jobs and weren't corrupt and trying to steal from the Canadian people, nobody, or take advantage of your positions, whatever you want to call it, stealing or taking advantage of positions, why did you guys just hand over the unredacted documents if you had nothing to hide? Why not hand over all the documents? Like, why heavily redact 29,000 pages?
Yeah, I'm not saying that the Liberals aren't responsible for it. They are.
I'm just saying this rhetoric just drives me nuts from the Liberals. Like, I just cannot get past this because it's just a complete lie.
Before them, so
was she saying it was
I'm not
all
sure
their
the
fault?
value.
Yeah, she said, look.
The Minister McKinnon on earlier in the show, and he said, no, Parliament's not going to come back early.
I mean, listen, it's so interesting to hear so many conservatives talk about how great Parliament is when they spent the last 4 months of the last session stalling every piece of legislation that came before them. So I'm not sure the value that I believe the value of Parliament today from the mouths of conservatives, but I don't think it's going to happen before the end of the prorogation.
That's what I mean. How do you believe the value of Parliament from Liberals then? The ones who are literally stealing from you too.
Well, they don't care about, the Liberals clearly don't think it's important because they're proroguing right now.
That's what I mean.
Nobody's arguing against that. They're just saying that the Conservatives also weren't doing anything for 4 months besides that.
I'm too freaking angry, man.
It's not like anything was getting done anyways.
It's like getting really.
They should have been out a long time ago. I'm not trying to excuse the fact that Justin Trudeau is still in there or that they're not letting the documents out. I'm just saying that I understand the point that if it's so important that it keeps going, then you wouldn't be stalling it like that over something.
Yeah,
but I guess it wasn't anything they thought was super important. They just wanted to stall until the Liberals handed over the documents or whatever they wanted them to do. And then, I mean, even then, they probably would have just used that as a reason to say that they're not going to support anything going forward because they want to call a non-confidence vote, right?
This whole thing is just so stupid. And you know what? This is why we're susceptible.
Nobody's been focused on getting anything done for the last year.
As a country. Well, no, because the thing is like getting Trudeau out, because Trudeau was preventing a lot. Like, what was Trudeau doing? Like the Conservatives, the best thing they can do to
Dental
get things
programs
done,
and stuff.
dental program, spending more and more money. That deficit was $61.9 billion. We're 4 years after COVID. This government has spent more money, even without COVID measures, than any other all prime ministers of all time combined. This administration spent more money than all of them. Like, granted, there's inflation, sure, but still, it's like.
I mean, I agree that the Liberals are dumb and they've done a horrible job and all that stuff. Like, I'm not really arguing against that. I'm just saying that I agree that nothing was getting done in Parliament. That's all it was.
Scheduled for March 24th. And I think that a lot of work can get done outside of Parliament. And I think a lot of that work has to be done with the premiers, which is almost the number one goal, right? Like making sure that as we break down the internal trade barriers, that premiers are talking to each other, that premiers are all on the same page with the federal government, and that we're all swimming in the same direction.
And 30 seconds left for you, Najud. Are we at that point? Are we ready?
Well, the Liberals drained the pool, lady, for 4 months. So we'll see what happens.
Try and hack
2.5 months, I guess. Sorry.
Through some of those trade barriers now, given the threat and moving forward.
Well, I think politicians have a little bit of political cover because of the threat that U.S. tariffs pose to actually go ahead and knock some of those down. The Internal Trade Committee, which oversees the internal trade free trade agreement in Canada, is supposedly putting together some recommendations for first ministers to begin taking down those barriers. So we'll just have to wait and see whether there's going to be like previous rounds of addressing this issue, or whether there will be actual real momentum for some of this to be taken down.
Najud Al-Malise joining us, Sabrina Grover, as well as Melanie Paradis. Hey, great to see all three of you again. Thanks for taking time for Power.
All right, well, that's it for that video.